What I want to tell you about today is an encounter that Dwight Campbell and I had back in 2016. You got to remember that we went out and spent the night out almost every Friday night. We averaged 42 weeks a year. 42 trips a year, at least one overnight in areas that we felt like we knew there was some history of the creatures being around, and we had evidence ourselves. So there is a particular field in western North Carolina. It's like in a public game land, and we go out in that field because we could use our thermals and we could see around us and watch the wood line around us. It was really a pretty good spot. So we spent a lot of nights in that field. So we tried different things to see what works, what doesn't work, just throwing things against the wall. So what we decided to do on this particular night was I downloaded part of the Sierra sounds and put them on my game caller. And we thought, we'll play a little bit of these Sierra sounds and just see if we got any response whatsoever. So we set up, got dark, so we decided we were going to play the sounds. So we played part of the sounds, maybe 15, 20 seconds of a particular part of it. And we were just quiet and we waited to see if anything happened. So we played them, we waited and we waited probably, what seemed like forever. I don't know. I guess we were expecting some sort of immediate response, but nothing happened for a while. So we sat there probably 45 more minutes after we played these sounds. And we noticed that all of our batteries went out in our thermals, our audio recorders. Like everything within a couple minutes died. And we didn't think anything about it because it's a constant struggle to keep your equipment going and batteries charged and all that kind of thing. So it was pretty frustrating, and we thought, well, crap. We're still going to sit here and see what happens. So, we're going to spend the night anyway and just see if we get hear anything, see anything, whatever. So about, a few minutes after all the batteries went dead, and we really didn't think that much about it, we started seeing in front of us in the wood line, probably 60 yards away from us, we started seeing these lights, what looked like sets of eyes, like self-illuminated eyes. And we were trying to figure out, like, what is that? It was like maybe past a little more than a half moon. And we were sitting in the dark, so our eyes were adjusted fairly well. So we kept seeing these look like sets of eyes, but it was like, I just don't know what that is. It looked kind of weird. And so we kept watching, and then they kind of moved out of in the tree line, and they came out, and we didn't see the illuminated eyes anymore. And so we were watching and kept watching, and we saw 4 figures, and they were like different sizes. And they had stepped out from the tree line just right in the edge of the field. And it was like, I asked Dwight, I was like, do you see that? And he was like, yeah, I see it. I'm like, what do you see? And he said, looks like 4 big figures standing on the edge of the field. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And we watched them, and they stood there and watched us. And I don't know how long that lasted. It seemed like forever. And we're like, oh, like, what do we do? This was like amazing. Like, what do we do? What do we do? And they were just standing there looking at us. Dwight was still sitting in the chair, and I was standing up. And we were like, so I didn't know what else to do. We weren't going to run. I mean, we were probably half a mile from the truck. So, getting to the truck, and we weren't going to run anyway unless they got like real aggressive, which has really never happened. So I was just, crazy as it sounds, I just waved at them. I was like, hey, we see you standing there. And they just stood there. And I was like, we don't mean you any harm. We see you there. And they just stood there. So I was not going to walk up there. I wasn't that brave. And they weren't throwing anything. They weren't making any noises. They were just standing there. So I waved them over. I was like, come on over, come in closer. We mean no harm. And obviously they didn't say anything or make any noises. They just stood there. And it was like the most surreal thing. And it's like, what do we do? I mean, I guess we just enjoyed this. We can't get it on thermal. We have no audio going. Of course, there was really no audio from them to capture. So, we stood there and watched. I don't know. This whole thing lasted 6, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And finally, they just turned and walked back into the woods. And we were just sitting there amazed. I told Dwight, I said, I'm glad I wasn't by myself or you weren't by yourself, because nobody's ever going to believe this. And we were just amazed that happened. We had things happen in that field before. We had found tracks, as I mentioned before. We have found or captured some audio, wood knocks, things like that. So that's why we kept going back to that field. It was not that hard to get to. We had plenty of room that we could see around us. So Dwight kids me, and he calls that the Sasquatch State of the Union address. And I felt kind of stupid, but I really didn't know what else to do. I mean, I'm glad they didn't get too close, but that was one of the craziest, probably the craziest thing that's ever happened. We've had a lot of encounters and captured what I think is some pretty good evidence, but these things, that particular night was definitely a highlight in our over 10 years of research that we've done. So yeah, that's what happened that night. I will say this about the batteries. The batteries going dead. I've heard of people having that happen to them. Like I said, we've been doing this over 10 years. We've got hundreds of nights in these different areas that we've had activity. And that had never happened to that point, and that's never happened since then. So that was really an odd thing. Did they have something to do with that? I don't know. It kind of seems like they might have, because we've never had that happen before. We've never had everything go dead within a few minutes. And you really couldn't, you could change batteries in the audio recorders, but we changed batteries and those batteries went dead. The thermals have the internal rechargeable batteries, so it takes a long time to charge those back up. But I don't know. Did they have something to do with it? I don't know. Can't prove they did. Either way, but it seems like a strange coincidence. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. What we do is we try to gather evidence or encounters, what we find, and you take from it what you will. I guess is the way we look at it. Not trying to prove anything to anybody. We just enjoy the technical aspect of trying to capture something. I know a lot of people are like, don't take cameras with you and you'll have better, maybe get a higher chance of an encounter or activity or something like that. Well, that may be true, but we've had a lot of activity, and we've had that encounter. We've had several other encounters, and we have been able to get some things on thermal as well as audio. So, everybody's got their way of doing things, and we just enjoy doing it the way we like to do it, So we try to keep audio going, keep thermals going. We have 4, 5 good thermals that we keep going. It just takes a lot to get that equipment and to keep it up, keep it going, keep the batteries going or charged all night. So that's that. So in closing, I'll say that was definitely one of our the most crazy thing that we ever encountered. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get thermal of it or audio of it. Did they come in response to the audio we played? I think they did, but of course I have no way to prove that. We've played those sounds in other areas and had nothing happen. So this is the one time we really had something. I think they came there that night. Maybe in my mind, they heard those sounds, maybe thought that was another group coming into their territory or something. I don't know. That's just a guess. And they showed up. 4 of them showed up to see what was going on. Probably when they saw it was me and Dwight, they were like, oh, because I know they've seen, in my mind, I know they've seen us out there before. And they were like, oh, it's just those 2 guys, That's what I think. I don't know if that's true or not. But they stood there for, I'm going to say, close to 10 minutes. When we just sat there and looked at them, and they just sat there or stood there and looked at us. So I'm glad it didn't get any worse than that. But that's what we were there for. We're trying to gather evidence of have encounters, sightings, and things like that. So we got more than our money's worth that night. I want to say one thing about playing the audio that we played. I'm not telling you to do that. We have played it before in other places and not gotten any response whatsoever. I guess what I'm saying is do that at your own risk. This particular night, that seemed to work, or at least I think it worked. But if anybody goes out and does that, be prepared. Because, we've had things thrown from a distance. We've been growled at. We've been the yells. We've had just, different things happen, but nothing that I would consider like really aggressive. I think they, sometimes when they're around, they'll do little things to let you know they're around. So, take that for what it's worth. And, we've done hundreds of outings since 2013. The vast majority of the time, as you probably know, nothing happens. We don't get anything. But we enjoy going out. We enjoy trying to use our equipment to capture something or see what happens. And occasionally something will happen. But if you want to do this, you got to put a lot of time into it, a lot of time and a lot of effort. Unless you're just lucky enough to be in a great spot. You know, I know some people have these things around their house and they have activity all the time. That would be great, I think. So, you know, do that at your own risk, I'll say. I've heard a lot of stories about people experiencing aggressive behavior. And, you know, I think probably a lot of that is their own fears. They're projecting their own fears. And it is crazy. You know, when I first started doing this, it was scary. And sometimes it still is a little scary here and there. But we've spent so much time in the woods at night that you kind of get used to it. And if something does happen, you get a yell or something thrown at you, or the super rare sighting or encounter, you know, that's just, you know, that's what it's all about. Those few minutes of craziness that's not supposed to happen, and you get to experience it. That's just what it's all about, for me anyway. So that wraps up this video. As always, stay safe and stay adventurous.